Okay. I say what? Oh, this is Brian. Call me a strange cat running in the heat of the night gardener, coming to you from the Devil's Hole, aka Ramble on Tower's Dungeon Studio in scenic and sunny Hespeler, Ontario. And you are listening to Ramble on Radio, episode 140. Ramble on Radio is the only Led Zeppelin podcast on this or any other known internets. Be sure to go to rambleonradio.com for all your news, reviews, links I might mention during the show. That's Led Zeppelin news, by the way. Other sites for what's Donald Trump done this week or something like that. You can subscribe to Ramble on Radio through iTunes. If you go to iTunes for any reason, downloading that Coverdale Page album, finally, bought the How the West Was Won on made for Apple MP3s. Stop by Ramble on Radio, leave a review. It helps Apple to find this podcast. So when you search for Led Zeppelin, it comes up. It helps other people to find this podcast. And you can also find it on Google Play. Same thing applies. Leave a review, leave a star or 7 or however many, I don't know. I've never actually checked it out on Google Play other than to make sure it was there. So I don't know if it's stars or how reviews go there. We're also available on Podbean at I Am Brian Dammit. And Podbean has their own mobile streaming app. So you can listen to it straight off the streaming app. You can listen on Stitcher Radio. As well, you can listen on Stitcher Radio, who also have a streaming app. Also, check out Ramble on Radio on YouTube. Follow Ramble on Radio on Facebook and at Ramble on Blog on Twitter. That intro music was Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant performing Shake My Tree live at the LA Forum, May 17, 1995. Not Jimmy Page and David Coverdale. It is a Coverdale Page song. That was Robert Plant singing. Apparently they did it at least once during the Page and Plant era. And the reason I threw that on was because today is the 25th anniversary of the Coverdale Page album. So I will really touch on that briefly today. A couple of things from the last episode. I was talking about Andrew from Get the Lead Out, and I couldn't remember his name. It was just a blank. I broke bread with the man. I know his name, but it's Andrew Lipke. Siddhartha is the name of his CD, and it was pointed out on YouTube that I said it was a Herman. Oh God, I'm going to get this wrong again, aren't I? I said it was a Herman Wouk book that it was based on, and it's Herman Hesse or Hesse. Let me make sure I got that right this time. Herman Hesse, Hesse. So I don't know if that's Hesse or Hess, to be honest with you. And it deals with the spiritual journey of self-discovery of a man named Siddhartha during the time of the Gautama Buddha. And I know Andrew commented at the time he released his CD that it had a big impact on his life. So anyway, I talked about that and I got that wrong, so I wanted to mention. I don't want to. This is not an Andrew Lipke podcast. Not that there are days he isn't worthy of one, I suppose. As well, I did this 4 or 5 times last week. I talked about you Facebook people, and I meant you YouTube people. So if I start referring to you people, Facebook or whatever, because I'm talking to the people on the podcast and I'm talking to people on YouTube, and we're on YouTube today. Check this blog out on YouTube. You can see the Dungeon Studio in the background. I have lined up the Led Zeppelin material all on one shelf, so you can spend an hour listening to what I say and trying to figure out exactly what's up there. Okay, that's the Dungeon Studio. Here it is, folks. By the way, the Dungeon Studio. All right, so this podcast was going to be about Now and Zen. I said that last time. I said I'm going to do a Now and Zen podcast. Then I went on holiday. And while I was on holiday, about 6 things dropped. And I don't mean, in my life or, dishes. I mean, like in Led Zeppelin news. There was just a bunch of stuff. Interviews, new shows. There was a whole bit An interview with Jimmy Page resurfaced in which he talked about releasing his new solo album soon, and the article basically just said new solo album this year from Jimmy Page, which would be about a year, a million or something. But it turned out to be a 3-year-old interview, and sadly, people took it seriously as a recent interview until somebody pointed out the date, and that's because Jimmy Page has been talking forever about doing it. He has stopped talking about it, so we must give him credit on that. But it's become a bit... And so other news has been popping up as I'm trying to keep up with it all. And I know I've sat down today and wrote everything out, and I know just right off the top of my head something I forgot, so I'm going to mention it quickly while I have it in mind. Led Zeppelin attorneys were back in court in California yesterday or the day before, arguing on the Stairway to Heaven copyright trial. Remember, they won that, and the plaintiff in this case, I suppose, has appealed. So they were arguing whether the appeal should go. I believe it was these court things work. You don't argue the appeal first. You have to argue whether the appeal is worthy. Whether the outcome is worthy of appeal, and then it can go to appeal. So lawyers are making money. That's what you need to know on behalf of Led Zeppelin right now. But that happened this week. Nothing much seemed to happen in that, so I'm not, and I didn't dig into it too much. And finally, finally, not the end of the episode, but, so yeah, anyway, I'm not going to end up doing Now and Zen right now. I'm going to talk about it at a future date. So when suddenly, randomly, I come out with this, in February, they released Now and Zen, and I want to talk about it, this is why, because I didn't get to it this time. And here I am already one record behind, because Coverdale Page was released 25 years ago today. And by rights, this would be the perfect day to do that one. With a band that's been, basically dead and buried for 40 years, I shouldn't be getting this much news on the old news feed about them, should I? I should be able to cover the old material without having to postpone. But next week's How the West Was Won. That's going to be the next podcast, guaranteed. And then who knows what news has dropped between then, and then we got Record Store Day to deal with. And we're going to talk about all that stuff today, mind you. Well, so you know what the next couple of podcasts are going to be. So when I'm going to get to talking about Now and Zen, when I'm going to get to talk about Coverdale Page, I've got them in the back pocket if I need a subject somewhere down the road in the next month or two. But that's what'll happen. It'll randomly come out of the blue. Oh, okay, he's talking about that now. But that's all that is, I suppose. And one other thing I was going to mention, I know what you're thinking. I know you all saw it. You all saw the news. You all breathed a sigh of relief. You all said, thank God Robert Plant's coming back to Toronto. That guy on that podcast can get to see Robert Plant. No more bitching, no more complaining, no more whining. Well, yes and no. Yes, he's back in Toronto. And yes, this time tickets are quite available, actually. I just checked before coming on. What am I going? I'm not on air, but, before recording. I just checked, and tickets are available. Seats. This is an amphitheater with a standing area. But actual seats are available for less than $50. Second row center, dead center, second row, $500, which is, that was kind of the cheap seats when he was in Massey Hall a month ago. This is a bigger venue, so more seats are available. Plus, it's the second time through town in 4 months or whatever. So probably a lot of people, like last time, said, I'm going to go see Robert Plant because, A, it's in Massey Hall, and it's a beautiful venue. And Massey Hall would have been the perfect place to see that kind of show, I kind of think. Instead of an open air, fairly largish venue. But B, how many people said, it's probably the last time I'm going to get a chance to see him. And now they go, well, that's on. So yes, I can go. It's there. I can make it happen. except it's actually on my wife's birthday, and it's not my wife's 37th birthday or something like that. There's some birthdays you can say, look, and my wife's not a Robert, so I can't say, oh, I got Robert Plant tickets for us. Thanks. That'd be like, thanks. What else you got me? A bottle of Irish whiskey, So she's not a fan, so that doesn't work. And yeah, some birthdays you can say, look, honey, I'll take you to dinner tomorrow night, but I got a concert tonight. Not one of those birthdays. This is one of the big ones. So you got to prioritize, and yeah, that's going to see Robert Plant on this occasion. It's not going to be the priority. And now that could change. Stuff happens, right? And if closer to the date, nothing's happening for her birthday, if she says, I'm going to go, our daughter lives in Vancouver, I'm going to do my birthday, I'm going to go visit our daughter in Vancouver. All right, see ya, I'm going to Robert Plant, then I'll go. But I don't expect that to happen. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get to see him again. And this has happened a few times. He's come through town and I've had something on. I'd say the last 5 times he's been in town, 3 of them now, I've had something else on. Prevented me from even thinking about going. So anyway, yes, I'll stop whining about not seeing Robert Plant. I'll stop whining about Live Aid not inviting me to go see Robert Plant. Or Live Nation. And Live Nation will email me this time. Hey, we got seats for you this time. Oh, so, and I will warn the wife in advance, though. If I get a chance to interview Robert Plant, she's out of luck. You have a birthday next year. Or not. I don't know. But, that's not going to happen. So I'll stop whining, but not because I actually saw Robert Plant. Guess what I'm saying. All right, in history, we have, we go back to February 29th. Robert Plant released Now and Zen on February 29th. On March 2nd, 1973, so we're talking 45 years ago, the European tour opens. They opened their 1973 European tour, which would lead, I'm going to say, to a North American tour in the summer, if I'm not mistaken. On the 3rd, in 1969, the first BBC Top Gear session, and there's a few BBC recordings happened in this period. The 14th in 1969, they were on Swedish TV. The 19th, 1969, they did the Alexis Corner's Rhythm and Blues BBC World Service show. To 21st, 1969. So in about 2-3 week period, they recorded for BBC 3 times and once for Swedish TV. And those are all in this time period. And all that stuff appears on the BBC sessions. So that's almost everything on the BBC sessions except for the 1971 show at the Olympia Theatre, which is all of Disc 2 and the new edition, a couple of the tracks off Disc 3. There may be one other performance between all these ones and that one. I believe there is one other performance that made it onto the BBC sessions. But, all right, on the 5th of March, 1971, the first performance of Stairway to Heaven happened in Belfast. On the 4th of March, 1980, John Bonham appeared on a TV show, All Right Now with Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly's a comedian, British comedian, had a TV show at the time. He came to America and had some success on TV here, TV and some movies and stuff. But he's kind of a frantic comedian, Robin Williams type. He's better as a comedian than he is as an actor. Not that he's a bad actor, by the way. But he had this show, and he's good friends with John Bonham, invited him on the show. And I guess Bonham was a little gun shy or something and didn't want to say anything. So they decided that Bonham wouldn't say anything. It was kind of prearranged. I guess he, kind of showed up and says, I'm really not sure I want to do this. A little bit of stage fright. Which is funny, people perform nightly doing what they do, but then you take them and put them in a different environment, and suddenly they become quite nervous about performing. It's an odd thing about human nature, isn't it? But anyway, so Bonham says nothing. He asks him some questions, and Bonham nods and shakes his head, and it's a bit of a gag thing they do between them, and it's amusing. If you get a chance, if you want to look John Bonham with Billy Connolly, if you just search that, yeah, John Bonham, Billy Connolly on YouTube, it does. I've seen it anyway, so I'm pretty sure it'll come up. Okay, on the 13th of March, 1975, the Led Zeppelin appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone, and that's the famous. What's the kid's name? Damn it. Anyway, fairly famous cover story. Cameron Crowe was a teenager who wrote the story, and is somewhat documented in the movie Almost Famous. It's a fictionalized account of his experience, I guess is the way to go. I'm trying to think what else. Coverdale page release on this day, the 15th of March, 1993. And that's about it, other than those BBC ones I mentioned. So, lots of news. Robert Plant appeared on the big interview with Dan Rather, aired this week. Quite a good interview, apparently. It's available online if you live in the States. Wyatt Brake, who's been a listener since day one and has communicated with me fairly regularly, is a regular on the Facebook page, has posted a link to it. If you're in the States, you can watch it. If you're outside of the States, it is blocked. And Wyatt did suggest a workaround involving a different web browser that supposedly does the stuff you want it to do, called Epic. And it supposedly does a VPN block or something like that, and not working in Canada on a MacBook. With double confirmation of that. Whether it would work on a Windows machine, I don't know. Whether it would work in some other country, I don't know that. But it looks like the workaround isn't fully completely. A workaround, it's some sort of VPN blocker is still required. But he spoke about many subjects in the interview. It was not your typical interview. It was not, when is Led Zeppelin getting back together interview. It was rather, he asked some big questions. He asked about Carrick's death, which very few people do, and I understand. I've often wondered, because I do ask for these interviews, so, you have to have notes, and you think about, what will I say? What would I say? And I often wondered whether I'd bring there's various things about that are interesting, that I think shed a light into Robert Plant, but it's also a delicate subject, So, but I would imagine an interview like a guy like Dan Rather, it's not just a get together. There was probably some discussion ahead of time about subjects. Can I mention this? Can I mention that? So I'm sure Robert was probably prepared for that question. And it was a very delicate, sensitive answer. And that one is available for everybody to view. But apparently all his answers were all the questions were in that range of good questions. All the answers were very sensitive, very delicate. He wasn't playing Robert Plant's the kind of smart-ass, funny answers that tend to get distorted to sound like he's being flippant or dismissive. That annoys us Zeppelin fans, right? It sounds like he took the interview seriously. Dan Rather took the interview seriously, and he got a very good interview out of it. So that's worth checking out if you can. Okay, so I think I mentioned last time there was rumors about Record Store Day. No, I didn't. But a rumor had come up that there was a Jimmy Page Playing Up a Storm LP to be released. That was in almost all the you looked at there were websites that said, here's what's rumored for Record Store Day. Almost all of them came up. The Jimmy Page Playing Up a Storm, yellow or orange disc. That turns out not to be a Record Store Day release, although it's being listed in some stores as a Record Store Day release. It's actually being released before Record Store Day. It's been released before, but it's basically some of Jimmy Page's session work. And it's on CD. And apparently it was released on vinyl a couple of years back. Now it's being re-released on vinyl. But that didn't make the cut for Record Store Day. What we did find out was Led Zeppelin themselves were releasing something for Record Store Day. Yay! How many times have I said, we've got to get some Led Zeppelin out there on Record Store Day? That's the big deal. Yawn, it's rock and roll with the Friends on the flip side. And the rock and roll is whatever. You remember the fourth album? He took it to LA to master, and then when he got back to England, it didn't sound right. There was something wrong, and they decided eventually it was the LA speakers that were too bright or something. But they said it sounded horribly muddy when they got it back, so they had to remix them in England, and that was what got released. Everything except for When the Levee Breaks, I think, which they used the LA mix for. And then when they did the remasters, they basically re-released the fourth album using the different mixes, or some of the different mixes made it on Stairway to Heaven. It was the different mix, the LA mixer. And I think When the Levee Break was the London mix, or there was a couple of, anyway. So this is Rock and Roll did not get released as the alternate mix. It is now going to be released as the alternate mix, and the flip side is Friends, and this seems to be a Friends without the orchestra. Whether it's Friends without the vocals, we don't know, but it seems to be without the orchestral part. That may be more interesting than the remix of Rock and Roll, to be honest. So it's not a big deal. It's, Jimmy trying to make a big deal out of what's not a big deal. I think we've all seen enough of that now to be whatever. We get that he's excited by it. I'm not so sure I am. But it's a Record Store Day release from Led Zeppelin, and I've been asking for that for years, so I'm not going to complain. As well, we got the Dream Syndicate, band called the Dream Syndicate, releasing an album, EP, 12-inch EP called We Found Ourselves Everywhere. And on one live track, How Do I Find Myself Here, it features John Paul Jones on the track. Furthermore, singer Nico has a 7-inch vinyl single, which features side A is I'm Not Saying, featuring Jimmy Page on 12-string guitar. And he co-wrote the B-side, The Last Smile, and produced, arranged, and conducted the B-side. So that's 3 Led Zeppelin items, 1 Led Zeppelin, 2 Led Zeppelin related items appearing for Record Store Day on end of April 20. You know what? April 21st. I thought I had the list in front of me here, and I thought there was a date on it. Yeah, April 21st, which is a Saturday, is Record Store Day. So about 5 weeks away. Start saving those pennies, because it's a 7-inch single, 45 RPM single, which back in the day cost 99 cents. Now it costs about $14.99. It costs more than a CD does, for God's sakes. But that's what they do. And we're going to pay it. I'm going to pay it. I know you're going to pay it. Something interesting. This story's interesting. Jason Bonham has changed the name of Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Experience to Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening. The reason is that Led Zeppelin requested the name Led Zeppelin Experience. For the 30th anniversary, something they've come up with, they have requested the Led Zeppelin Experience moniker. Problem is, Jason spent a good chunk of money coming up with a new logo about a year ago. And it is JBLZE is the logo. You'll see it, and it does come up. If you go to his webpage, it comes up, the website, it comes up automatically, and it's a fancy logo. So he didn't want to, he spent a lot of money on it. He's spent some time marketing the JBLZE logo and look. It's kind of slick and more modern than what it doesn't use the Led Zeppelin font and that sort of thing. So he didn't want to get rid of it, so he just used evening instead of experience. That was his compromise. He was happy to give them the Led Zeppelin experience, but he didn't want to give up the E. So there it is. So Jason Bonham, his band is now the Led Zeppelin Evening. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening, which is a bit, it's good. I mean, it's sums up what it is. An evening of Led Zeppelin, but it's awkward sounding. Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening. You know, Jason Bonham's An Evening of Led Zeppelin would be is excellent, or you know, that sort of thing. But it is awkward sounding. It is not quite right sounding. But I fully understand what he did, and I'm not going to question it. Not going to question it. Okay, I'm jumping around here a bit. This is probably a mistake, but I'm doing it anyway. So I mentioned Robert Plant coming back to Toronto. He announced, first he canceled some dates in August due to prior commitments, which raises an eyebrow. What prior commitment could Robert Plant have that caused him to cancel some European dates in August? And then you realized, he's doing the Obstweedle 50th anniversary gig. That's what he's doing. So you weren't expecting that, were you? More likely he gets back together with Obstweedle than Led Zeppelin at this stage, I think. But by the way, if I get a chance to interview him this summer, that's the first question. Just warning you. So it was, I believe, August in 1968 where Jimmy Page went to see Robert Plant sing. He had been told about this singer. And the band Robert Plant was playing in at the time was called Obstweedle, and they were playing at some teacher's college. So that's what I think is going on in August in Robert Plant's life. Just saying. But he did announce a new North American tour, a second North American tour in 6 months. And it goes like this. June 8th, Atlanta. June 10th, Richmond, Virginia. June 12th, Columbia, Maryland. June 13th, Forest Hills, New York. June 15th, Toronto. June 17th, Chicago. June 19th, Vail. June 21st, Berkeley. June 23rd, State Line. June 24th, Pasadena. June 26th, Troutline, Oregon. June 27th, Redmond, Washington. Forgive me. June 29th, Vancouver International Jazz Festival. Do you know, I've been thinking about going out to visit my daughter in Vancouver and running a half marathon in Vancouver at the end of the month. I wonder if that falls in with that 29th date. Anyway, and then on the 22nd of July, we are at Vils Charroux Festival in France. On the 23rd of July, at Paris, France. 25th of July, Festival de Carcassonne in France. And July 27, Milano, Italy. And the wife's been talking about going to Italy in July. Maybe we'll make that one work too. July 29th, Lorach, Germany. July 31st, in Pardubice in the Czech Republic. Finally, August 1st in Dresden, Germany. That's Robert Plant's schedule. So yeah, he is coming back to Toronto. That one's not going to work though for me, as I mentioned before. But I wonder if that Vancouver works. Could be a fair compromise, don't you think? I missed this. It was announced a while ago, and I just was going through some stuff today and realized, oh wait, this is different. So Led Zeppelin is releasing a book, a photo book, one of those like Jimmy Page, just Led Zeppelin on Led Zeppelin or whatever. It's going to be a big, fancy coffee table photo book. There was another one announced called Led Zeppelin Live. I didn't get that these were two different books. They kind of seem to have been announced around the same time. At least in my mind, they were around the same time. And they got clogged up in my mind. It's the same thing. It is a book called Led Zeppelin Live. It is a large photo book, and it will be edited by Dave Lewis, friend of this program, Dave Lewis, Type But Loose. And I have to get Dave on. Dave, every time the new edition of the magazine comes out, I get a message from him saying, love to come on the podcast. And I was going, yeah. And it doesn't get managed. I have to get him on in the very, very near future. All right, if you caught Pawn Stars last week, I posted this on Facebook. Go over to Facebook and check. But somebody came in with some albums, some Led Zeppelin albums. It was signed or something, and he wanted a fortune for it, and Rick wasn't in. But Rick said, he got it into his head. He wanted an object. So he managed to find an object. He got an object, and he managed to get a deal on an original, one of the 1,000 produced by Swan Song and sent to various people, objects. It's numbered, it was in the box, everything. And then at the end of the episode, they show he's disappeared for 3 days, and he's all these pictures of him like at restaurants and bars and whatnot with the object on the table in front of him. And that would be me. That would be me. Excuse me 1 second here. I'm going to click off. Oh, throat's drying out from all this talking. So yeah, I was saying, I kind of commented on the post, that would be me. And my wife would be going, oh, really? You're pulling that out? It'd be 4 months later, my wife, are you pulling that thing out again? You're going to get people to take our picture with that stupid thing in the middle of the table. We've never been to this particular McDonald's. So that would be me. Okay, so there is releases to talk about, and I'm going to be really brief on all of them. How the West Was Won is going to be is out in 8 days, right? This is on vinyl, it's on CD. The next episode, I'll undoubtedly talk about it to some degree or another. If I find it completely underwhelming, it just sounds like the last one, whatever. I won't say much. If I end up listening to it and going, wow, what an improvement in sound, blown away by this, that, or that, we'll talk a lot about it. We'll see how it goes, but or whatever because conversation happens online and whatnot, and I might pick up on an idea or two in there on how the West was won. But so it's next week, 8 days. So next Friday, Friday the 23rd, we will have new Led Zeppelin material to go spend our money on. It's going to be an exciting year for spending money. As far as we can tell, there's nothing added to it. There's nothing removed from it. There has been suggestions that Goodbye, Mary Lou. Hello, Mary Lou. Goodbye, love. Yeah, was cut from the Whole Lot of Love medley on the LP version, I think. But I don't know that that's been confirmed, and I don't think it has been. And Paige has said basically nothing's been cut, nothing's been added. So it's exactly, if you have the CD from 15 years ago or whatever it is, it's what it is. It's what you're getting. But it's remastered. Hopefully it sounds better. As I talked about before, it is considered not a very good sounding album. So we'll see where that goes. A quick story on the Hello, Mary Lou. We're in the car. I said earlier, my wife's not a big fan. And but I was listening to BBC sessions in the car, and she got in, and it was kind of the latter half of the, and I don't know, whatever he was playing reminded me of it. And I started singing, Hello, Mary Lou, goodbye. And my wife looks and goes, as if they would sing that song. On the old CD. There it is. On it comes, and she listens to it, and she listens for a minute, she goes, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, well, trust me, if you listen, it's good. I haven't converted her, though, just as it was. That's pretty good. She also, Big Log came on one day on the radio, on the satellite radio, and she kind of says, I like this one. So, it's only been 27 years. I'm getting her there. One song at a time. So yeah, Now and Then, going backwards now. Now and Then was released February 29th. I'm going to talk about it bigly at some point or another. I'll dedicate most of an episode to it. But there were a couple of things that were interesting. It's the first album post Robbie Blunt. Robbie Blunt was the guitar player that Robert Plant was comfortable playing with. He's a childhood friend and stuff, and he might have been an obs tweedle for all I know. And he was so say he was one of those guys that Robert Plant was comfortable after the death of John Bonham, just kind of playing with, and they really were just jamming and stuff, and then kind of pushed out the first album more through osmosis as much as anything. The second album was a much more focused album, and it shows at times. But then Plant got kind of a little frustrated, I think, with those guys. The third album, not so good. It didn't work out well. He was trying something different. He was trying to go more synthesizer based, and so out comes. And then a few years later, Now and Then. One of the things that happened in Now and Then was the producer. Forgive me, I can't remember the name. I would have full notes and whatnot. The producer talked Robert Plant into embracing. Is it Davy Johnson? Dave Johnson? Phil Johnson, maybe? Something like that. Into embracing his Led Zeppelin past. Up until then, he had never played Led Zeppelin, and he was kind of shunning it. And so they got Jimmy Page in to do a couple solos. He did solos on Tall Cool One, Heaven Knows. And of course, Tall Cool One, they sample Led Zeppelin licks. And really, Tall Cool One is a modernized version of Train Kept a Rollin' too. So he's embracing his Led Zeppelin heritage at that point. That's kind of an important element of Now and Then. And in the tour to follow, he played Led Zeppelin songs for the first time as well. Other interesting detail on Now and Then is Kirsty MacColl sang backup vocals on The Way I Feel, Why, White, Clean and Neat, and Tall Cool One. Kirsty MacColl was an Irish singer, and she's really well. I forget what. There is a band she was with. I can't remember their name. But she is the singer from the Pogues' Fairy Tale of New York, which is the Christmas song. They got Cars Big as Bars, they got Rivers of Gold, Wind Goes Right Through You, It's No Place for the Old. The famous Pogues' Christmas song, and Kirsty MacColl is the singer, the female singer in that album. That's just a couple of notes on it. It's worth noting. Coverdale Page, 25 years ago today. Coverdale Page led to Page Plant. It led to their reunion. And it was interesting. Somebody commented on Dave Lewis's site today, if Page and Plant never got back together, Coverdale Page was a pretty interesting together. It's a good album. It is a very good album. But apparently Page was a little embarrassed by Coverdale's onstage antics. He's mouthy on stage and stuff. So whether that's true or not, or that's just speculation, but had they stayed together, it would have been interesting. And the comment was on Dave Lewis's page, the history of Jimmy Page post the 90s might have been very different. This is something that maybe could have stuck together and done something interesting for 10 or 15 years. Whether true or not, pure speculation, but it's a worthy thought. But a couple of things. Yeah, there was a Japanese tour, and it was recorded. It was all recorded, and apparently David Coverdale has all the tapes. Much of the music, much of the songs, apparently were Zepp-era Page compositions. They were ideas that he had during Zepp. Shake My Tree, which you heard in the intro, and you will hear the rest of it in the outro, was apparently something Page had put together around the time of In Through the Outdoor. So it would have been, in interviews he's talked about, John Bonham and I had talked about doing something a lot harder for the next album. We already had some ideas in place. Apparently one of those ideas was what became Shake My Tree. Which isn't, that's an interesting, okay. And furthermore, there's apparently 7 more songs in the can for Coverdale Page. They were actually going to release an EP. When they were going to do a U.S. tour, they were going to release an EP to go with that tour. And that EP would be the 7 more songs they actually recorded. So if they decided to go and do let's revisit the Coverdale Page era. It is an album that could stand a good remastering, a modern remastering. It's a bit what they call wet sounding, kind of an 80s sound, very production heavy sound. It could, it could stand a little remastering, and there's 7 songs and ready to go for the big deluxe edition. Plus, you could throw in a Japanese tour. There's possibilities there. Not that there's any talk of those possibilities. Anyway, that's a couple of quick notes on those 2 albums. Finally, Jim McCarty's album, Walking the Wild Lands, has been released. In the UK, at least. I believe it's worldwide on iTunes. Haven't heard it yet. It is getting good reviews. There's been a number of reviews, and they're all quite positive. End of April-ish is when he's going to be. I remember when he was on this show, he talked about being in Toronto. It is the end of April. It's a date set, and I have to work out to get tickets and whatnot, but I'm almost positive I will go. So that is it. That's it for Ramble on Radio episode 140. 140 episodes. We're 10 away from 150. I say this every time I hit one of these kind of magic numbers, but I'm shocked that I've done this many. As I'm sure if you think about it, you sit back for a while and go, holy crap. How do you do 140 episodes on a band that's been dead for 40 years? I don't know. You make a lot of mistakes along the way, though. I can tell you that. Yeah. But that is it. Check rambleonradio.com for notes on this week's podcast, Led Zeppelin news, reviews, and any links I might mention in today's podcast. In the next couple of days, I'll try and get the links to that Robert Plant interview, and I'll do a few other things like that will come up. There was a few things mentioned in the show, wasn't there? Follow Ramble on Radio on Facebook, at Ramble on Blog, and at Ramble on Blog on Twitter. You can subscribe to Ramble on Radio through iTunes. If you go to iTunes, if you subscribe, or whatever reason you're in iTunes, please leave a review. It helps Apple's algorithms find the podcast, which helps other people find it. Ramble on Radio is available on Google Play. Same thing as in Play there. Leave a review, leave a few stars, and help Android users find the podcast as well. Listen on Stitcher Radio, and I still have the Spreaker thing in there, and Spreaker I'm killing off, so I keep stumbling across that. Listen on Stitcher Radio, or download it from Brian Dammit on Podbean, and check it out on Ramble on Radio on YouTube. And I will have this episode up to YouTube in the next 48 hours, I believe. Thanks for listening to Ramble on Radio episode 140. And here is Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, Page and Plant, doing Coverdale Page, Shake My Tree, live at the LA Forum, May 17, 1995.